Welcome to SupTales. New video, new story. So today I'm going to draw this angry and powerful mood of Hanumanji. And for this painting I'm using watercolor pencils. For the base of the face I'm starting with ochre. I'm going to lightly fill the areas where I want the skin tone, and then I'll use later a little water to blend everything together. So I filled all the face or skin tone area, and now I'm using water to blend everything. Once I activate the color with water, it becomes much smoother and more balanced across the face. For the background, I'm using yellow along with blue and black shade. I want it to give a feeling of sky. But at the same time, because Hanumanji has this angry and intense expression, I don't want the background to feel too bright or peaceful. And again, I am using water to blend colors together and create a softer transition. Now let's come back to face. For the midtones, I am using crimson and amber. I am slowly building these colors around the cheeks, forehead, and under eyes. And later for the darker tone, I'll use dark brown and black. So the idea is to build the face in layers, light first, then mid-tones, and finally the deepest shadows. While I'm doing all this, let me tell you one of my favorite stories about Hanumanji. So it's about Hanumanji and the sun. When Hanumanji was a child, he was extremely playful and innocent. One morning, he looked up at the sky and saw the bright red sun. But little Hanumanji thought the sun was a beautiful glowing fruit, and naturally he wanted to eat it. So he jumped into the sky and started flying towards the sun. At that time, Hanumanji had extraordinary powers. He was the son of Vayudev, the god of wind, and he was incredibly powerful even as a child. When Indradev saw Hanumanji flying towards the sun, he tried to stop him with his Vajra. The Vajra struck Hanumanji and he fell down injured. When Vayudev saw his son hurt, he became extremely angry. And because Vayudev is associated with the wind and air, he withdrew the air from the world. Imagine what that would mean. There was no air. Living beings couldn't breathe, and the entire universe was thrown into chaos. Seeing this, the gods realized that they had to make things right. They came to Hanumanji and blessed him with many extraordinary powers and protections. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Hanumanji received so many powers that he became capable of doing incredible things. But he was also a very innocent and playful child. And eventually, because of a divine blessing, he forgot about the extent of his own powers. So he grew up without fully realizing just how powerful he actually was. And honestly, I find this part of story really beautiful, because sometimes we can have a strength within us and still not know that it's there. From the powerful child to Sri Ram's devotee. So this is the next part of his story. Later in his life, Hanumanji met Sri Ram. At that time, Sri Ram was searching for Mata Sita. Hanumanji met him without even fully understanding the extent of his own abilities. He was simply humble, sincere, and devoted. And that's what I love about Hanumanji. He had immense power, but he never met that power about himself. His strength was always in service of something greater. And then came the moment when his forgotten powers had to be awakened. When the Vanar army had to cross the ocean to reach Lanka, everyone was wondering who could make that impossible journey. And Hanumanji himself didn't realize that he could do it. That's when Jamvant reminded him. And this is probably one of my favorite lessons from the entire story. Jamvant didn't give Hanumanji any new power. He simply reminded him of the power he already had. Sometimes that's all we need to. You are capable of much more than you think. Sometimes someone needs to remind us this. And once Hanumanji remembered his strength, he became ready to cross the ocean. But the journey wasn't easy. While crossing the ocean, Hanumanji encountered several challenges. One of them was Surasa. Okay, so first coming back to the painting, this is the important part. So let's take a little pause from story. Now I have to work on Hanumanji's beard. For this I am using my crochet tool to gently create the texture. I am basically scratching or lifting tiny areas of the surface so that white of the paper comes through, and this is really useful when I want to create the impression of white or lighter hair. And creating those marks I am going over the area with black pencil, and you can see that the little white marks I created earlier are still visible. So instead of drawing every single hair individually, I am creating the impression of hair texture. This makes the beard and eyebrow look much more natural, and it also saves a lot of time. Now I am moving on to the jewelry. For the jewelry I am mostly using two different shades of yellow along with black. I am keeping the colors quite simple because I don't want the jewelry to take away the attention from Hanumanji's face. So coming to the after this we'll draw the eyes. Since I wanted to create a really angry and intense expression, I'm not going to use my watercolor pencils for this part. Instead, I'm using my colorful pens to get sharper and more vibrant details. And whenever we think of anger, one color that immediately comes to mind is red. So for Hanumanji's iris, I'm using red. I'm also adding some red lines on the white part of the eyes to create the appearance of veins. That little detail makes the eyes look much more intense and gives Hanumanji that angry, powerful expression I was looking for. After that, I'll use white pen to add highlights to the iris and around the lower part of the eye. These tiny white highlights may look like very small details, but they make a huge difference. They make the eyes look more alive, and honestly, when you are drawing an angry expression, the eyes are everything. Now, coming back to the story. So, while crossing the ocean, Hanumanji encountered several challenges. One of them was Surasa, who was sent to test him. She told Hanumanji that he had to enter her mouth before he could continue his journey. So Hanumanji became bigger and bigger and bigger. But Sursa kept making her mouth bigger too. Instead of continuing this battle of strength, Hanumanji suddenly became incredibly tiny. He entered her mouth and immediately came back out, and just like that, he passed the test. I love this part because Hanumanji could have used his strength to fight. But he didn't. He used intelligence instead of violence. And I think that's such an important lesson. Being strong doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes a great strength is knowing when not to fight. Now let's come back to the background. Since I've imagined this as kind of night sky, I want to add some stars. So, and in my imagination, the light is coming from this side of the background. So I want the edge of Hanumanji to catch that light. For that I am using white to create softer highlighted outline. It gives the impression that there is a light coming from behind him. and separates the figure from the darker background. And so for that I'll use white color and outline the left side of Hanumanji white and red color and highlight it. And for the stars, I am going to use one of my favorite simple techniques, a toothbrush. I'll take some white color on the toothbrush and then use my fingers to gently flick the bristles, and there we go. It creates this beautiful little splatter effect, almost like tiny stars scattered across the sky. But as always, I managed to drop quite a lot of white color in one place.